Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into a true story that'll leave you stunned. Names and details have been changed to protect their privacy. Imagine this. What would you do if your mother-in-law showered her own daughter with love, gifts, and attention, while treating you like you barely exist? It's a gut punch, right? That's my reality. And I'm ready to share the raw, unfiltered truth. This isn't just about family drama. It's about hidden favoritism, unfair treatment, and my fight to uncover the secrets behind it. The injustice stings, and I know you'll feel it too. Will I find justice? Or will this tear my family apart? Stick with me to discover the truth. I'll never forget the day it hit me. We were at my mother-in-law, Linda's house for a family dinner. The kind where everyone's supposed to laugh and bond. The table was set with her best china, candles flickering, and the smell of roasted chicken filling the air. Linda was in her element, fussing over her daughter, Sarah, who sat at the head of the table like a queen. "Sarah, honey, try this wine, it's your favorite," Linda cooed, pouring a generous glass. Sarah, with her perfect highlights and designer dress, smiled smugly. Meanwhile, I was juggling a fussy toddler, my plate half empty, and not a single glance from Linda. My husband, Mark, squeezed my hand under the table. But it didn't ease the sting. It wasn't just that night. The pattern had been there for years, subtle at first, like a slow drip. When Mark and I got married, Linda was polite but distant. I thought she'd warm up. Instead, she poured her energy into Sarah. Birthday Sarah got lavish gifts, jewelry, spa weekends. Me? A generic card, if I was lucky. When I had my son, Ethan, Linda barely visited, claiming she was busy. But when Sarah's dog got sick, Linda dropped everything to play nurse. The double standard was glaring, and it hurt. I'd lie awake, wondering why I wasn't good enough. Was it me? Or was Linda hiding something deeper? The dinner that night pushed me to my limit. Ethan spilled juice on the tablecloth, and Linda's eyes snapped to me, cold and accusing. "Can't you control him?" she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah smirked, sipping her wine. Mark tried to deflect, but I felt the room shrink. I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending to grab napkins. But really, I needed to breathe. That's when I overheard Linda and Sarah whispering in the next room. "Don't worry, Sarah," Linda said, her voice low. "I've got everything set for you. Set for what my stomach twisted." What were they planning? And why was I always left in the dark? I wasn't imagining things. The favoritism was real, and it wasn't just about gifts or attention. Linda's actions screamed one truth: Sarah was her priority, and I was an afterthought. I'd spent years trying to win her over, cooking her favorite meals, inviting her to Ethan's milestones, but nothing worked. Now, I was done playing nice. That whispered conversation lit a fire in me. I deserved better. And so did my son. If Linda was hiding something, I'd find out. But where to start confronting her felt risky. Mark loved his mom, and I didn't want to drive a wedge between us. Still, the unfairness gnawed at me. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? That's where I was, teetering on the edge of a truth I wasn't sure I could handle. As I stood in that kitchen, gripping the counter, I made a choice. I wouldn't let this slide. I'd watch, listen, and piece together what Linda was up to. The next few weeks were a blur of small clues. Phone calls Linda took in private. The way Sarah breezed in and out with a knowing smile. I started keeping a mental note of every slight. Every time Linda dismissed me or fawned over Sarah. It was exhausting, but I couldn't stop. What was Linda planning? And how far would she go to favor Sarah over me? The answers were coming. And I wasn't ready for what I'd uncover. The weeks after that dinner were like walking through a fog. Every step heavy with suspicion. I couldn't shake Linda's whispered words to Sarah. I've got everything set for you. What did that mean? I kept my eyes open, watching for any hint of what they were scheming. The unfairness of it all burned hotter each day. Linda's favoritism wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a wall between me and the family I'd married into. I wanted to belong. But every interaction with her made it clear Sarah was the golden child. And I was barely tolerated. Take Sarah's visits, for example. She'd sweep into Linda's house with her oversized sunglasses and expensive handbag. And Linda would light up like it was Christmas. Sarah, you look stunning. She'd gush, pulling her into a hug. Meanwhile, I'd be there, juggling Ethan's diaper bag and a casserole I'd spent hours making. And Linda would barely nod in my direction. Once, I caught her rolling her eyes when I asked if she wanted to hold Ethan. I'm not great with babies, she said. Yet she'd spent an hour cooing over Sarah's new puppy the week before. The sting of it lingered, like a bruise I couldn't ignore. Have you ever felt like you're screaming for someone to see you? But they just look through you. It wasn't just the small slights. Linda's bias showed up in bigger ways too. Mark and I were struggling. Financially, his job was steady. But with a toddler and a mortgage, things were tight. Sarah, on the other hand, lived rent-free in a condo Linda owned. When I mentioned we were saving for a new car, Linda brushed it off. You'll figure it out, she said. Her tone clipped. But when Sarah wanted to renovate her kitchen, Linda wrote a check without blinking. Mark tried to stay neutral, saying, Mom's just helping Sarah get settled. Settled. Sarah was 32, with no kids and a cushy job. I bit my tongue. But inside, I was fuming. Why was Sarah handed everything while we scraped by? The tension spilled into our marriage. Mark loved his mom and sister, and I hated putting him in the middle. But one night, after Ethan was asleep, I couldn't hold it in. Doesn't it bother you? I asked, my voice low. Your mom treats Sarah like royalty and us like we're invisible. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. She's always been closer to Sarah, he admitted. But she loves you, too. Loves me, I wanted to scream. Love doesn't look like dismissal or cold stares. I pressed him, asking if he'd ever noticed Linda's favoritism growing up. He hesitated, then nodded. Sarah was the baby. Mom always babied her. That was it. An excuse for years of unfairness, I went to bed angry, feeling more alone than ever. Then came the family barbecue. Linda hosted it in her sprawling backyard, the air thick with the smell of grilled burgers and sunscreen. Sarah was there, of course, holding court with a charming laugh. Linda hovered, refilling Sarah's drink, while I chased Ethan around, trying to keep him from toddling into the pool. At one point, Linda called everyone for a toast. To family, she said, raising a glass. Her eyes locked on Sarah, warm and proud. I stood on the edge of the crowd, Ethan tugging at my skirt, and felt like an outsider in my own life. That's when I noticed something, a quick glance between Linda and Sarah. A shared smile that felt like a secret. My gut twisted. What were they hiding? By the end of the night, I was done pretending everything was fine. As we packed up to leave, Linda handed Sarah a thick envelope, her voice low. "For your project?" she said. Sarah tucked it away, avoiding my eyes. An envelope, a project. My mind raced. Was this tied to what I'd overheard at the dinner? I didn't say anything. But in the car, I turned to Mark. "We need to talk about your mom," I said. He nodded, but I could see the strain in his jaw. The truth was closing in, and I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it. The envelope at the barbecue haunted me. What was this project Linda mentioned, and why was Sarah so secretive about it? I couldn't let it go. The favoritism was bad enough, but now I sensed something bigger, something deliberate. I started paying closer attention, determined to uncover what Linda and Sarah were hiding. My days became a blur of parenting Ethan, managing work, and piecing together clues. Every interaction with Linda felt like a puzzle piece, and I was desperate to see the full picture. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something's wrong, but no one else sees it? That's where I was, teetering between doubt and conviction. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I got my first real lead. Marg was at work, and I'd taken Ethan to Linda's for a rare visit. She'd agreed to watch him for an hour while I ran errands. Her house was pristine, as always, with framed photos of Sarah on every wall. Ethan was napping on the couch, and Linda was in the kitchen, humming softly. I'd planned to grab my keys and go. But then I heard her phone buzz on the counter. She didn't notice me standing nearby as she picked it up and answered in a hushed tone. "Yes, the paperwork's ready," she said. "Sarah's meeting them next week." "Paperwork meeting who?" My heart raced. I pretended to fuss with Ethan's blanket, straining to hear more. "It'll be hers. Don't worry," Linda added before hanging up. Hers. What was she giving Sarah now? I left the house, shaken, my errands forgotten. In the car, I replayed her words, each one fueling my suspicion. This wasn't about a new handbag or a spa day. Linda was orchestrating something big. And I was being left out. Back home. I tried talking to Mark, but he was exhausted from a long day. "Maybe it's just business," he said, barely looking up from his phone. Business Sarah worked in marketing, not some high-stakes deal. And why was Linda so involved? I didn't push Mark further. He was already defensive about his mom. But I knew I had to dig deeper on my own. A few days later, I got my chance. Linda invited us to her house for coffee. A rare gesture that felt more like an obligation than warmth. Sarah was there too, her usual smug smile in place, while they chatted about Sarah's latest vacation. I excused myself to the bathroom. On my way, I passed Linda's home office, the door slightly ajar. My pulse quickened. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I slipped inside, my eyes scanning the desk. There, under a stack of bills, was a folder labeled Property Transfer. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were legal documents, with Sarah's name and an address I recognized a rental property Linda owned, worth a fortune. Linda was signing it over to Sarah. For free. I felt sick. Mark and I were drowning in bills, barely keeping up with our mortgage. And Linda was handing Sarah a house. The unfairness hit like a tidal wave. I snapped a quick photo of the document with my phone and slipped out, my heart pounding. Back in the living room. I forced a smile, but inside, I was raging. Why was Sarah getting everything while we struggled? And why was Linda keeping this from us? I looked at her, laughing with Sarah, and saw her for what she was, a mother who'd chosen one child over another. And I wasn't part of her equation. That night, I couldn't sleep. The photo of the document burned a hole in my phone. Should I confront Linda? Tell Mark? If I did, would it tear our family apart? The secret was out, but it only raised more questions. What else was Linda planning? And how far would she go to keep me in the dark? I needed answers. But I had to be careful. One wrong move, and I'd lose more than just my place in this family. What would you do if you found proof of betrayal? But speaking up could cost you everything I was about to find out. The photo of that property transfer document was like a grenade in my pocket. Every time I looked at it, my anger flared. Linda was handing Sarah a house while Mark and I scraped by. The unfairness wasn't just personal anymore. It was a deliberate choice to exclude us. I couldn't stay silent, but confronting Linda felt like stepping into a minefield. Mark was loyal to his mom, and Sarah had a knack for playing the victim. I needed to be smart, but the weight of the secret was crushing me. Have you ever known a truth so ugly you dreaded saying it out loud? That's where I was, torn between fear and the need for justice. I spent days planning my move. Confronting Linda alone was risky. She'd twist my words or dismiss me. I needed Mark on my side, but he hated family conflict. One evening, after Ethan was asleep, I sat him down. My hand shook as I showed him the photo. "Your mom's giving Sarah the rental property," I said, keeping my voice steady. "For free. While we're drowning in debt?" Mark's face went blank, then hard. "You went through her stuff?" he asked, his tone sharp. I flinched, but held my ground. I had to. "She's been hiding this from us. Don't you see how unfair this is?" He stared at the photo, his jaw tight, and finally nodded. "I'll talk to her," he said. It wasn't the support I'd hoped for, but it was a start. The next weekend, we went to Linda's for dinner. My stomach churned as we walked in, the air thick with the usual perfume and the clink of wine glasses. Sarah wasn't there, which made it easier. After dessert, Mark cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about the property transfer." Linda's smile froze, her eyes darting to me. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice too sweet. I couldn't stay quiet. "I saw the documents," I said, my heart pounding. "You're giving Sarah the house. Why didn't you tell us the room went silent? The kind of silence that screams trouble." Linda's face hardened. "This is none of your business," she snapped. "Sarah needs stability. You and Mark are fine." Fine, I wanted to laugh. We were barely keeping up with bills. And she called that fine. "It's not about need," I said, my voice rising. "It's about fairness. You treat Sarah like she's your only child, and we get nothing." Mark put a hand on my arm, but I shook it off. "I've tried to be part of this family, Linda, but you pushed me away." Why? Her eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding. You're too sensitive? She said, I don't owe you anything. The words hit like a slap. Mark tried to mediate, saying, Mom, we just want to understand. But Linda stood, signaling the conversation was over. This is my decision, she said, and walked out of the room. I sat there, stunned. I'd expected denial, maybe excuses, but not this outright dismissal. Mark looked defeated, his shoulders slumped. In the car, he was quiet, but I could feel his anger. Not just at Linda, but at me for pushing. What did you expect, he muttered. She's always been like this. Then why hadn't he warned me? Why let me fight this alone? The drive home was silent, my mind racing. Linda's words echoed. I don't owe you anything. But she did respect. At the very least. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for my place in this family. What would you do if someone told you didn't matter? I knew I couldn't back down. But the cost was already higher than I'd imagined. As we pulled into our driveway, I made a decision. Linda's secrecy and favoritism had to be exposed. Not just for me, but for Mark and Ethan. I didn't know how yet, but I'd find a way to make her see the damage she was causing. The truth was out, and there was no going back. Linda's dismissal at dinner left me reeling. But it also lit a fire. She thought she could brush me off, but I wasn't done. Her favoritism wasn't just unfair. It was tearing at the seams of our family. And I needed allies to keep fighting. Mark was on the fence, torn between loyalty to his mom and the truth I'd forced him to see. I couldn't do this alone, but who could I trust? The family was a web of old loyalties, and picking sides felt like betraying someone. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for what's right? That's the tightrope I was walking. I started with my sister-in-law, Claire, Mark's cousin. She'd always been kind, slipping me a smile at family gatherings when Linda's coldness was too much. I called her the next day, my voice shaky as I spilled everything the property transfer. Linda's harsh words, the years of favoritism. Claire listened, then sighed. I'm not surprised, she said. Linda's always put Sarah on a pedestal, but you're not wrong to call it out. Her support felt like a lifeline. But she warned me, be careful. Linda doesn't like being challenged, and Sarah's her blind spot. Claire promised to back me if it came to a family discussion. But she wouldn't confront Linda directly. It was something, but not enough. Then came a curveball. My brother-in-law, Tom, Sarah's husband, reached out unexpectedly. We'd never been close, he was quiet, always in Sarah's shadow. But he asked to meet for coffee. At the cafe. He looked uneasy, stirring his drink too long. I heard about the dinner, he said. Sarah told me her version. My guard went up. Her version, I asked? Tom nodded. She says, you're jealous, stirring trouble. But I've seen how Linda treats you. It's not right. My jaw dropped. Tom, of all people, saw it. He admitted. Sarah leaned into Linda's favoritism, milking it for perks like the property. I don't agree with it, he said. But if I speak up, Sarah will lose it. I left the meeting stunned, an ally where I least expected, but one too scared to act. Could I count on him? Or was this a trap? The family started splitting at a kid's birthday party. I caught whispers Linda had spun the dinner confrontation to paint me as ungrateful. Some cousins sided with her, saying I should respect her choices. Others, like Claire, gave me quiet nods, urging me to keep going. Mark was caught in the middle, his patience fraying. "Why can't you let this go?" he snapped one night. I fired back. "Because it's not just about me. It's about us. Ethan. Our future." He stormed out. And I sat alone, wondering if I'd pushed too far. The family I'd fought to join was cracking, and I was at the center of it. Then Sarah called, her voice dripping with venom. "You're making a fool of yourself," she said. "Mom's just helping me out. Stay out of it." I gripped the phone, my anger boiling. "Helping you? She's giving you a house while we struggle. How's that fair?" She laughed, cold and sharp. "Life's not fair. Get over it." She hung up, but her words were a challenge. I wasn't backing down. Claire texted me later, saying Sarah was rallying family against me, claiming I'd snooped and attacked Linda. The betrayal stung, but it also cleared my vision. This wasn't just about a house. It was about a family built on favoritism. And I was done playing nice. By the end of the week, I had a fragile coalition: Claire, maybe Tom, and a few distant relatives who'd seen Linda's bias over the years. But Sarah and Linda were a united front, and Mark was still wavering. I needed to tip the scales. But how another confrontation was coming. And this time, I'd need more than words. What would you do when the people you love are divided? And the truth might break them apart. I was about to find out. And the stakes were higher than ever. The family was fracturing, and I was at the heart of the storm. Sarah's phone call, her smug "get over it" echoed in my head, fueling my resolve. Linda's favoritism had built a wall between us, and now the cracks were spreading. Claire's quiet support and Tom's hesitant confession gave me hope. But Mark's indecision was a weight I couldn't shake. The drama was no longer just whispers or cold stares. It was a full-blown clash, and I was ready to push it to its breaking point. Have you ever reached a moment where you knew things would never be the same? That's where I stood, bracing for the fallout. It all came to a head at Linda's annual holiday party. Her house was decked out twinkling lights, a towering Christmas tree, the smell of cinnamon and pine. Family filled every room, laughing over eggnog. But the air felt charged, like a storm about to break. I decided to confront Linda again, this time with witnesses. Claire had agreed to back me, and I hoped Tom might step up. Mark wasn't happy about it, but he promised to stay by my side. As we walked in, Linda greeted us with a tight smile, her eyes lingering on me like I was an intruder. Sarah, draped in a red dress, shot me a look that could freeze fire. The night started smoothly, but I was on edge, waiting for my moment. After dinner, when everyone gathered in the living room, I saw my chance. Linda was toasting to family unity, her voice syrupy sweet. I couldn't take it. I stood, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "Linda, we need to talk about unity," I said, loud enough for the room to hush, heads turned. "You talk about family, but you've divided us. Giving Sarah a house while Mark and I struggle isn't unity, it's favoritism." The silence was deafening. Linda's face went pale, then red. "This isn't the time," she hissed. But I pressed on. When is you've ignored us for years, and now you're hiding deals behind our backs? Sarah jumped in, her voice sharp. You're obsessed Mom can do what she wants with her money. I turned to her, my anger spilling over. It's not about money. It's about fairness. Why do you get everything? And we get scraps. The room erupted. Cousins murmured, some nodding, others glaring. Claire spoke up, her voice calm, but firm. She's right. Linda, you've always favored Sarah. It's not fair. That shifted the mood. More heads nodded, and I felt a surge of hope. But then, Mark's aunt, a Linda loyalist, snapped. You're ungrateful, stirring trouble. The argument exploded, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Tom, to my shock, spoke next. It's true, he said, his voice low but clear. Sarah, you lean into it? Linda, you enable it. Sarah's jaw dropped, her eyes blazing at him. How dare you, she spat. Linda looked betrayed, her hands clenched. Mark finally stepped in, his voice strained. Mom, we just want transparency. Why hide the property deal? Linda's eyes flashed. Because it's my choice, she shouted. You don't get to question me. The room fell silent again, her words hanging like a guillotine. I saw the truth in her face. She'd never see us as equals. The party ended early, family leaving in tense clusters. In the car, Mark was quiet, his knuckles white on the wheel. You got what you wanted, he said. But it didn't feel like a win. I'd exposed the truth. But at what cost? Sarah and Linda were furious, and half the family saw me as the villain. Claire texted later, saying, You did the right thing, but it's not over. She was right. The drama had peaked, but the fallout was just beginning. What would you do when the truth sets the room on fire? But the flames might burn you too. I'd started this fight, and now I had to finish it. The holiday party left scars. Linda's outburst, You don't get to question me, rang in my ears, a stark reminder of her refusal to see the unfairness. The family was divided, and I was the spark that lit the fuse. Claire and Tom had backed me, but Sarah and Linda were a united front, painting me as the troublemaker. Mark was distant, caught between anger at his mom and frustration with me for pushing so hard. I'd exposed the truth. But now, I needed resolution not just for me, but for Ethan and our future. Have you ever fought for justice, only to wonder if it's worth the wreckage? I was there, determined to demand accountability, no matter the cost. I decided to try one last time to reason with Linda. A public showdown hadn't worked, so I asked to meet her privately. She agreed, reluctantly, and we met at her house on a grey afternoon. The living room felt colder than usual, the photos of Sarah on the mantel glaring down. I sat across from her, choosing my words carefully. Linda, I don't want to fight. I started, but your favoritism hurts us. The property transfer, the constant preference for Sarah. It's not fair to Mark or Ethan. Her lips tightened, but she didn't interrupt. I want us to be a family, I continued. Can't we talk about this openly? Linda's response was icy. I've done nothing wrong, she said. Sarah's had a harder life. She needs more support. Harder life, Sarah. With a rent-free condo and cushy job, I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. We're struggling. Linda, Ethan's daycare costs are killing us. Why does Sarah get a house while we get nothing? Her eyes flashed. You're not entitled to my help, she said. Mark's always been independent. Sarah's different. The excuse felt hollow, a justification for years of bias. I pressed. What about Ethan? Doesn't he deserve your support? Too. For a moment. Her face softened. But then, she shut down. This conversation is over, she said. Standing, I left, feeling defeated, but not surprised. Linda wasn't going to change, not without a push. That night, I talked to Mark, laying it all bare. Your mum won't budge, I said. We need to set boundaries, or this will keep hurting us. He looked exhausted, but he nodded. I'll talk to her. He promised. A few days later, he did, calling Linda to say we'd limit contact unless she treated us fairly. It was a bold move, and I was proud of him. But Linda's response was silence. Days turned into weeks, with no word from her. And I wondered if we'd lost her for good. Then Claire called with news. She'd spoken to Linda, who was rethinking things after Mark's ultimatum. Claire suggested a family meeting to clear the air, with her as mediator. I was skeptical, but agreed it was a chance to demand change. The meeting was set at Claire's house, neutral ground. Sarah showed up, arms crossed, and Linda looked guarded. I spoke first, my voice firm. This isn't about money. It's about respect. Linda, your favoritism divides us. We want to be equals, not afterthoughts. Claire backed me, urging Linda to listen. Tom, surprisingly, added, Sarah, you've taken advantage of this. It's not right. Sarah scoffed. But Linda stayed quiet, her face unreadable. The discussion was tense, but it felt like progress. Linda didn't apologize, but she agreed to consider our perspective. Sarah stormed out, muttering about betrayal. But I saw a crack in Linda's armor. Was it enough? I wasn't sure. But I'd done all I could to demand accountability. What would you do when the fight for fairness leaves you exhausted? But the battle's not over. I was ready for whatever came next. Knowing I'd fought for my family's place, the family meeting at Claire's left me drained but hopeful. Linda's silence and Sarah's dramatic exit weren't the resolution I'd dreamed of. But they were a start. I'd laid bare the truth about Linda's favoritism. And for the first time, she'd listened, even if reluctantly. Mark and I drove home in silence, the weight of the fight settling over us. I'd pushed for justice, but the outcome was still unclear. Would Linda change? Or had I just burnt bridges? Have you ever stood up for what's right? Only to wonder if you've lost more than you gained. That's where I was, staring down an uncertain future. Over the next few weeks, things shifted, slowly. Linda didn't call, but she sent a text inviting Ethan for a playdate. It was small, but it felt like an olive branch. When we arrived, she was warmer, asking about Ethan's daycare and even offering to help with costs. I was cautious. Years of coldness don't vanish overnight, but I thanked her. Mark noticed the change, too. She's trying, he said. And I nodded, though my guard stayed up. Sarah, on the other hand, kept her distance. Her texts to Mark, short and bitter. Tom later told me she was furious about the property deal being questioned. But Linda hadn't signed it over yet. Was she rethinking it? One evening, Linda asked us to dinner, just us. No Sarah. My stomach knotted, but I agreed. At her table, she looked tired, Her usual polish faded. After Ethan went to play, she spoke. "I didn't realize how you felt," she said, her voice low. "I've always wanted to protect Sarah. Maybe I went too far. It wasn't an apology, but it was close. I seized the moment. It's not about Sarah needing more. It's about fairness. We're family, too." She nodded. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding. She promised to be more open, starting with family decisions like the property. Mark squeezed my hand, and I felt a weight lift. Just a little. The resolution wasn't perfect. Linda didn't undo the years of favoritism, and Sarah remained a sore spot, refusing to engage. But the family dynamic began to shift. Claire hosted more gatherings, insisting on equal treatment, and Linda followed her lead, albeit stiffly. Mark and I set firmer boundaries, prioritizing our little family. Ethan became the bridge, his giggles softening Linda's edges. The property deal stayed on hold, and while I didn't expect miracles, the pause felt like a small victory. I'd fought for justice, and though the scars remained, I'd carved out a place for us. Looking back, I see the lesson: fairness isn't given, it's demanded. Linda's bias hurt because it made me feel invisible. But speaking up gave me a voice. Families are messy, and love doesn't always come easy. What would you do if you had to fight for your place at the table for me? It was worth the battle, not just for the outcome, but for the truth it revealed. We're still navigating this, but I know now that silence isn't an option. I hope my story inspires you to stand up, speak out, and demand what's right. Share your thoughts below. What's your family drama? Let's keep this conversation going. My journey as a daughter-in-law exposed a painful truth. My mother-in-law, Linda, favored her daughter, Sarah, while sidelining me and my family, from lavish gifts to a secret property transfer. Linda's bias was blatant, leaving me feeling invisible. Determined to uncover her schemes, I confronted her, sparking family division. Allies like Claire and Tom emerged, but Sarah and Linda fought back, dismissing my pleas for fairness. The holiday party showdown and a tense family meeting pushed Linda to rethink her actions. Slowly, she began to change, offering small gestures, like helping with Ethan's daycare and pausing the property deal. Sarah remained distant, but the family dynamic shifted toward equality. The fight wasn't just about a house, it was about respect and belonging. I learned that justice requires courage, even when it risks everything. Families are complex, but silence only deepens wounds. My story is a call to demand fairness and speak truth, no matter the cost. What's your experience with family favoritism? Share below. And let's reflect on the power of standing up.